again, it's a hard question to answer. So we're talking about African American. It's kind of hard because it's almost like, how does it say? What's in the beginning shall be again in the end. And I'm not by any way, shape, or form saying this is the end, but and anybody could fact check on this. Most places on the planet, the indigenous people of that region were people of color. They had some type of melanin, whatever the case may be.
Right.
So as you get into what we consider spirituality and spiritual systems, I don't think that there's any system that wasn't, I don't want to say originally, but there weren't people of color involved in it or in the foundation or establishment of it until some certain point where you have splits and, what we consider racism or race is fairly new.
All right.
You know what I'm saying? Agreed. So fast forward in several thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, and we have this thing called the African dispersion or diaspora, and then you have people being brought to the United States of America, stripped of their culture, stripped of their cultural identity and belief systems, but at the same time, those same belief system was hidden away or actually taught by those elders that were still alive into, to the slaves.
Right.
So in some way, shape, or form, it carries on. And even when we say a European or Western religion, when you comparatively look at what we consider a black church, or peace to my brothers in the Nation of Islam, or even what were they called? The Moorish Science Temple. Right. Peace to those brothers. When you start looking at these things, they start expressing a different dimension. It's a different dimension of expression. So if I want to call these the Black Church, even though I think the best way to say is the church, but the church is expressed in different ways.
In different ways. You
see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because even though we're all human beings, based on, ideologies, things that are taught to us, things that some could say could be inherent. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. That these things move through families. It keeps getting passed on from generation to generation, just from observing. It's expressed in certain ways. So,
no, go ahead.
So, if you want to call it the Black Church, has its expression. Islam has its expression, and if you want to say in the Nation of Islam, or even as they say the 5% nation, the nations of gods and earth, that's a branch off of that in some way, shape, or form. Right. The Moorish Science Temple is an expression. And even in that, it's still some Islamic and Christian principles in it. Say again?
Hebrew Israelites.
Yes. Hebrew Israelites is another expression of it. And some would even say it's actually going back. It's actually reaching back. Some would say reaching back through your DNA, reaching back through the spirit.
Right.
Bringing forth these things in modern times as what we consider the Black expression of it.
I got you.
Right.
I know I said a lot.
Yeah. And let us set the record straight that we're not saying that every Black person came over here on slave ships.
Absolutely not.
Right. So it was a lot more of us here than came on slave ships, because most of the ones that came on slave ships went to South America. But it was a lot more here than probably came on the slave ships, right? And some of them probably were indigenous,
right?
Which had indigenous or Indian or Native American traditions. And then you had some, what they would say, migrated over here from Africa that was here way longer than when they say that Christopher Columbus came over.
Right.
Way longer.
Right.
And they brought their religion or their spirituality system with them. Now, like you say, it might have gotten tainted and polluted by certain things because of slavery, working on people's plantations. You know, then they're trying to instill things inside you that you didn't really uphold to.
Right.
But like you say, it still was people in the community or in that set still had the remembrance of
Right.
their forefathers.
Right.
And but like you say, yes, today I think a lot of it is Christianity, but it's broken up a lot in other other ideas.
Right.
Right, right. So, with that being said, is, you know, what African Americans consider as a religion or consider as religion, is it tied to the resolution of trauma?
Say it again. Or ask that again.
Is what the African American understand as religion, is it tied to the resolution of trauma? So something that you said a few minutes ago is okay. You said that I'm just using slavery as one point because generally most people got some knowledge about that, right? And you know, when that was happening, they had certain ideas, certain norms that influenced or primed how they related to the creator. And because of that, they sought religion, or they had an understanding of religion based on the traumatic experiences of that generation.
Okay.
So that's the basis of the question. So I'll repeat it again. Is what the African American understands as religion, is that understanding tied to resolving the trauma that has been experienced from generation to generation? Because remember, you talked about certain things being passed on
Yes.
from generation to generation. And like one interesting dynamic, just a little small, and you know, you can fact check it if you want, but like the Generation Z, those people who are coming into Earth, they're not necessarily tied to religion.
Right.
They're finding, well, I'll say this. They're either more accepting to embrace their own journey, or they don't deal with it at all.
Okay.
So
I would say unless you give them a purpose to accept what you're trying to give them, because now, like you say, we have Hebrew Israelites, right? Which I understand myself to be. With the younger people, they accept that more because now it comes down to our identity thing, right? And I was looking at a video this week, and it was like, well, you know, it's all about identity to them, right? And then they tried to say, well, it's not all about identity; it's about a relationship with the Creator,
Right.
right? But knowing your identity is a way to know the Creator, or the acceptance of the Creator, or to understand the Creator. It's knowing thyself. That's what we will always say. Know thyself. If you know yourself, you know the God or Creator or the existence. You know that. So I would say yes on both ends. I would say no and yes on both ends because of the trauma issue, right? Some look at it as being traumatic, especially when it's talking about Christianity, because you were given something that you may not been partaking in. But let me say this though. Remember I said that some of these people migrated over. A lot of them people came from Spain that was already Christians.
Right.
And they were, you know, people of color. And I would say probably African American people or what have you. They migrated over here. So, but once it started get to a point of being diluted by another group of people saying this and saying that, then it can become traumatic. But some would say no because we've been doing this the whole time.
Right. To answer your question, I always say the same thing. Going back on the paradoxical is yes, it's kind of hard not to go through what the ancestors of the so-called African American that came over here through the transatlantic slave trade, to say that it wasn't traumatic, right? And now you're being, if you want to say, forced to learn a perspective that some could say aspects of it is foreign, and you have to deal with that, and it's gonna morph as we move through the centuries. It's gonna morph.
What you did.
Right. So,
let me say this, right? So, like, I asked that question because, I have opportunity to talk to a lot of different people, and a lot of people that I talk to, they don't know why they attach themselves to religion. They just say like, well, I did it because my mom and my dad did it. That's pretty much like the primary answer that I get. Like, that's what I saw everybody else do. Not necessarily, this was an individuation, that I took upon myself to, reintegrate with the Creator. You understand what I'm saying? I do it and I see things through how somebody else saw it and how they portrayed it to me.
I agree. I definitely agree. Because, like you say, when we're talking about the influence, you more likely you're gonna probably walk into your mother's or your father's or your grandfather's footsteps when it comes to spiritual things.
Right.
Now, sometimes you may not because you have choices, and once you get hold of some information that you may know to be true, then that's the area more likely you may pursue after.
I agree with you. Like, my family, like they like Baptists, right? And that's what I saw growing up. You know what I mean? So, but I don't walk it out the way that my father walks it out.
Right.
Like, a lot of that changed for me, as I got older. And I want to say, like, I had my mind made up. I probably was like 19 or 20 that, like I need to figure this out for myself. You know what I mean? But not necessarily on the premise that, I attached my consciousness to religion because of something that was traumatic. Because when I was growing up, I didn't really know a lot about, the diaspora of, the in-depth parts about like slavery and how it links back to the scriptures and, different things. I didn't know a lot of that. That wasn't a conversation at our dinner table at night.
Right.
Just a real quick side question. You think the word slavery is I don't want to say a stupid word, but a misnomer? Because slaves are Slavs, which is a group of people, and that term was thrown on them. Just for the sake of the podcast, we're using the term, I get it, but so I keep thinking like forced servitude, things of that nature. So you might hear me say that.
Yeah.
Because
you could say it's forced servitude.
Forced servitude.
I mean,
I want to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
What was your question again? You said,
do you think that it's an appropriate word, slavery? Because we keep using that term, you know what I'm saying? And if you look in the script in the Bible, in the Hebrew, there's no word that's called